Oh, it's a good day to talk about Alone. This video is going to be all about the experience of being on the series Alone on the History Channel. Chilly day here in Alaska. It's about 50 some degrees. It's been raining all day. Very similar to Vancouver Island weather. And today I'm going to run over 100 different things that are part of the whole Alone experience. I'm going to try to shed some light on a lot of things people have questions about. I'm going to try to give some perspective to what it's actually like to be inside that experience. I'm going to answer your questions that you leave in the comments. I hope you enjoy the whole scope of this video. Stay tuned. Of course, if you follow this channel, you may or may not know that Brooke and I were on season 4 of Alone, and Brooke is currently on season 5. Brooke and I spent 49 days on Vancouver Island, and that was 7 weeks. That's 7 Mondays, that's 7 weekends, that's 7 pay periods, that's 7 Friday nights. It was a long time. And when you really think about how long a time like that is, just sit still for 20 minutes with yourself and do nothing. And then try to do another 20 minutes. A lot of the work that goes into surviving in the wild is setting yourself up and then trying to stay sane. But that's another story for another time. What an innovation the show Alone was. The people on season 1, none of them actually knew what it was going to be like. They didn't know what it would physically take to be out in the bush that long. About the only thing we had to go off of at that point was Les Stroud and Survivor Man. That's self-shot survival. He'd take his camera gear out, spend a week in the bush, film what he did, and that was the show, Survivor Man. Obviously, Alone is in that same vein. It's like Dick Proenneke. He had his camera, he was by himself, he documented what he did. Les Stroud did that in a survival format. Alone, it's the same concept, but it was also in an arch series where the episodes aren't standalone. It's a contest, and it was a contest format. So it was very innovative in that you weren't going to be out for a week. You're going to be out as long as you can take it. And season 1, those guys were kind of like astronauts. Nobody really knew how long they could take it. A lot of people probably thought that they could be out there for 6 months and found out real quick that it's not what you would think it would be. So Alone is a very innovative show. Les Stroud, he's not a big fan of Alone. He disparages the show. You got people that weren't survival experts that know a bit about bushcraft and survival and weren't claiming to be survival experts. And a lot of people have stayed out 5, 6, 10 times longer than Les Stroud stayed out in his series. Now Les spent almost a year out in the bush one year, and that's just not as popular of a program as his television series Survivor Man. And I think it kind of burns him that the spotlight kind of went from him to the Alone series, and it's kind of his genre. He's the guy that really innovated that genre of self-shot survival TV. I wish Les, if you're watching, I wish Les would kind of embrace the show a bit, because it's, if it wasn't for Les, there probably wouldn't have been an Alone series. And as opposed to kind of, taking it hard that the focus has kind of shifted. We would love to have Les as part of the discussion here, because he really is the grandfather of that genre. He's kind of got a chip on his shoulder about it. Let's just move on with that. But Les, we all love you. We all respect what you did. We know that you innovated that format. Moving on. Either there's a casting call or you're aware of the show and you contact the production company and say, hey, I want to apply. If you do apply and you do get interest from the production people, it's kind of a back and forth with Skype and phone calls and emails, and if you're lucky you get invited to boot camp. We've seen that in the program where the boot camp is, it's a week long of a lot of different testing, and everybody in the production company is involved in the decision of who gets to go. Because, somebody might treat the executive producer different than they treat the PA, different than they treat the caterers, whatever. And it's good to have a lot of eyes on everybody. And after a week, you kind of get the gist of what it's all about, who's real, who's maybe different than what they portrayed. But you spend this time at boot camp, and then you have to wait to see if you get chosen. And if you get chosen to go, it's a short window between when you get chosen and when you go out to the site where you're going to launch from. And it's not like you sign up for the show and they put you on a green helicopter and drop you off. That's not how it goes at all. It's all of this lead up. It's all of boot camp. It's all of this 10-day period before you launch where there's a million things that need to be gone over. Camera gear especially. People have to get familiar with filming themselves because the camera is getting everything that you're doing, and you're the one operating the camera, and the footage is everything. It's the show. It's everything. The media, the little media cards, they're worth way more than their weight in gold because they contain what ultimately becomes a show. So you got to learn how to run the cameras, and that lead up time is, that's a big part of that. From the time that you contact the production company and they contact you back, to the time you go to boot camp, to the time you're in that lead up period, to the time that you launch, there is a massive transformation that takes place. People just don't understand how different things are from that first phone call to getting dropped off with the green helicopter. What you see on TV is you see people, putting their backpacks on, saying goodbye to their family. They jump in the helicopter and then they're a contestant. You go through this boot camp process and you see all of these people that you view as competitors, and everyone is sizing up everybody else. And it's all about the money. It's all about winning. It's all about proving what you can do. And by the end of boot camp, you started to make friends with a lot of these folks. And it's even though you still got that competitive thing, you're making friends that you're probably going to have for the rest of your life. And then you got that short break, and then you actually get to hang out for like 10 days with the people that actually made the show. In that time, you're being fed and taken care of, and you're hanging out with all these cool people, and you're forming these relationships, and the importance of the money just starts dropping out. You still want to prove what you can do, but you really start to lose that whole competitive thing. And by the time you actually get in the green helicopter and fly away, you find yourself thinking, man, I wonder what this person's up to, and I hope they're okay. And you're concerned about the people that you're supposed to be competing against because they're your friends. That's one thing that I find over and over is people, they focus on the money, they focus on the competition. By the time you get dropped, you're still in a competition. You want to win, but you're not dealing with competitors. You're talking about other people that are going to go through their version of the same thing you are about to plunge into, and you worry about them, and you've made a lot of friends, and it's really a whole different dynamic. And that leads me up to launch day. The whole launch thing is a very odd situation because everyone is standing out there on the launch area, and at first, the helicopter, it takes the first person, and I don't know how they're chosen. It's maybe random, I don't know. But everybody is cheering on that first person that's flying away in the helicopter. We're all excited, and we wish that person well. Whoever it is, you're all in this together at this point. Yes, it's a competition. Yes, there's $500,000 on the line, but you've grown close enough to these people that you're not like, well, I'm gonna do way better than that person. You're like, good luck, do the best you can. So the first person flies out in the helicopter, and then by the time the second person goes, it's a half hour later, everybody's starting to cool off. It's still, great send off. And this goes on all day long. I was one of the last people to launch on season 4. Rebar was still there, and Sam was still there. And we'd been standing on the dock in the rain for hours. No food, nothing. And you're just freezing your butt off by then. That's something I think that really should change because, the first person that goes, they hit the ground. They've got all that daylight to figure out their bearings, get a fire going, whatnot. And they're nice and warm. They just finished breakfast. They're ready to rock. And by the time the last person goes out, they've been standing there all day long waiting for their turn to get on the helicopter. They're chilled, they're cold, they're running out of daylight. Maybe they should do that different. So by the time I left anyway, you know, it was like, there's 3 of us left. There's no cheering party. You're cold. You're kind of pissed because you're losing daylight and you're in the rain waiting. And that's what launch is like. You got 2 people to be like, yeah, you know, go do it. And the helicopter ride is awesome because I think it's the first time I'd ever been on a helicopter. So the helicopter ride is great, very disorienting. You can't figure out where they're taking you because they go around and you just lose track of where you're at. When they dropped me off about 20 minutes later, it wasn't what I expected. It was a little shocking. The place they dropped me was way out, like on the outer coast of this island. And you could see there was rough water, you know, out there in the main body of the ocean out there. And it was just jagged, and it was right on the edge of the coast. The trees were huge at the bottom and tiny. They were real stunted just from the weather. And it wasn't anything that I thought it would be at that particular time. So that brings me into the next thing I want to talk about is shock and early tappers. Okay, lots of people get their butts busted about tapping early. People that have been there a day and leave, or an hour and leave, or have some kind of an accident and then they leave. Joe Robinette comes to mind. Joe Robinette was on season 1. All this was new ground. He lost his ferro rod. He didn't really see any future in trying to get a fire going in those conditions. And Joe tapped fairly early, but he was doing good. The ferro rod would have been a huge impediment, and Joe has done fantastic with his YouTube channel. I've never met Joe, never talked to him, but people are really down on early tappers. But let me explain to you that there's really a shock that goes with that first bit. I know a couple guys that tapped early. There was a guy on season 2 that tapped really early. There was a couple guys on season 1 that tapped really early. You don't know how you're going to handle it. Every single one of those guys that tapped early was probably pretty confident going into the bush. You can't hold it against somebody for reacting a certain way because no one knows how anyone is going to react. The people themselves don't even know how they're going to react. The production company has guessed every year and they've never picked the person who's actually going to win it, because there's so many variables. We think this person's going to do really well, or we think this person's probably going to be the winner. They've never had it right. Someone who's got all the qualifications and who's got all the training, they might get out there and they can't handle it. They can't handle the shock of how different it was than what they thought it would be. That brings up a really good point. If there's one piece of advice I could give anybody that's going to be on the show in the future, it's this. Don't think about what you're going to do when you get there. I know it's counterintuitive, but you don't want to paint a picture of what the whole thing is going to look like and how you're going to operate in that frame. Because the chances are when you hit the ground, it's not going to be anything like what you thought it was. And you're going to have to start improvising right from the beginning with this preconceived notion still flopping around inside your head. It's best to just assume that it's going to be different and to resolve yourself to deal with whatever you get dealt at the time and not work it all out ahead of time. Because it's probably not going to look like what you thought. You're probably not going to have the resources you thought. It's just going to be different. So if there's one piece of advice I can give anybody that's going into the show, just get ready to roll with it. And when you hit the ground, do the best you can with what you have. So on that topic of shock and launch day and early tappers, I want to enlighten you guys about launch a little bit. I talked about the lead up time to launch. Now, for season 4, it was like 10 days of hanging out with your friends, making new friends, lots of good food, lots of fellowship, a beautiful setting at this lodge out in Quatsino Sound, utter isolation. So you're just hanging out with a bunch of other people who love the show, are excited to go out in the field, to do what they came to do. It's wonderful. Food and stories, and it's great. The production people are awesome. Everyone wants to hear your thoughts on stuff. You know, they're trying to keep everybody happy. Everyone is kind of, you know, we've got past that, you know, sizing up the competition. Now everyone's friends. We're all ready to go out there, ready to do the best we can. This awesome lodge, you're hanging out with cool people, you're eating great food, you're telling stories, you're having so much fun. You take this helicopter ride and you're on the green alone helicopter and you get out there and you're ready to go. And when the helicopter goes away, it's the first time in 10, 12, 14 days that it's absolutely silent. And it kind of comes down on you like a weight that you never expected. And it hits you, the epiphany that all the fun is done. I mean, it's going to be interesting from here on out, but all that, you're probably not going to see a lot of those people ever again, unless you do well and they do well and you come together for the reunion show, or unless you make a point to keep that friendship going. There's people you're never going to see again that you just saw that morning, that you just had breakfast with that morning, and now all the good food is gone, all the fellowship is gone. All the people, you know, keeping the emotions high, they're all gone. And it's just you in the middle of the bush getting rained on. And it is a sobering, heavy shock of a feeling. Now, I've fished in Valdez. I've bushwhacked in Valdez. Brooke and I spent a summer living in Sitka. That Pacific Northwest country, I know it enough to kind of have an idea what I was getting into. But the place they dropped me and that emotional weight of every fun thing being over and now it's just work from here on out, that took me by surprise. I remember standing out there thinking, holy cow, it took about 30 minutes of just soaking it in to kind of reset from that just abrupt, shattering moment of change where it goes from yeah to like you're by yourself, you're alone, you're completely disoriented to where you're at. Now you realize this is what you're actually there for, and all that amazing fun stuff of boot camp, of that lead up, it's all over. But I wanted to mention that in the context of just the shock of the change. It's not just being out in the woods in an unfamiliar area. It's that change from the food and the lights and the setting and just being taken care of, and there is a change, poof, and it adds exponentially to the shock of silence and solitude. So it's like you're at a party that's just pumping and everyone's having a good time, and you like walk outside to use the bathroom and you get lost and you can't find the party anymore, and by the time you realize what's going on, you're just out in the middle of the woods and the party's over, and it's a jarring experience. So guys that tap early, guys that seem to be hit with shock, it's more than just the woods. There's more to it than that, and I wanted to bring that to light. Oh, people missing their families. That's another thing that kind of plays into that whole thing with the shock and the early tapping and stuff like that. You know, somebody's out there 3 days and they're like, man, I really miss my family. Well, it might be 2.5 weeks since they saw their family. Might add a couple days of airfare and then 10 days of running camera and first aid and don't get yourself killed and just the whole lead up to the show. And it might be 2 weeks, it might be 2.5 weeks, maybe it's 3 weeks since they've seen their family. It's not just day 3, it might be day 23. because they didn't just walk out the door, say goodbye to their folks, get on the green helicopter and get dropped off. You know, there's that in-between period that people don't think about. So that kind of plays into the same thing. People missing their family early. It's not early. It's, you know, you might have been there half a month by the time day 3 rolls around, or day 5. And you probably are missing your family. So cut them guys some slack. Oh, there's so much to talk about. I want to talk for a second about the time on TV. I already told you there's a week of boot camp. There's this lead up to the show, and then there's whatever time you've got on the show. I'm just going to take Brooke and I, for example. We were there 49 days. Let's say 50. With the lead up, that'd be 60. If you figure you're filming part of boot camp, you're filming part of the lead up, and some of that makes it into the show, making the cut, and you're filming 6 hours a day when you're out there in the bush, you're running camera all the time, because, you know, if you shut the camera off, something cool will happen and you'll be like, ah, crap, I missed it. Because if you didn't film it, it didn't happen. But let's just, for conversation's sake, let's say 60 days total. And let's say we're running camera 6 hours a day. That's 360 hours of footage. Out of that, the entire time we were on alone, we probably had 30 minutes to 40 minutes of airtime in season 4. And it was a lot. I mean, there are people that get 10 minutes of airtime in a season. We were there quite a while, and we caught some cool stuff on film. Let's say we had a half hour, 360 hours of footage, and we ended up with 30 minutes, 45 minutes. When people say, you know, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this thing and that thing, I think they're missing the point that we don't have any control over what is shown on the show. There's a group of editors that are looking through thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of film. And when they find something that they think is interesting, you know, it gets bookmarked and set aside. And that's what they ultimately build the show off of. They never call and say, hey, you did this cool thing, would you like us to put it in the show? No, they never say that. They make the show with the footage that you give them. The more you film, the better chance that you're going to capture something interesting. It's something every one of us that's been on alone deals with. The fact that out of our entire experience, there's this microscopic piece of it that the world has seen. And we're glad for that. We really are. That the world has seen part of our experience, even if it's minuscule. Literally, there are times where I'd sit on a rock staring at my feet for 30 minutes, just resting. And that's the same time span that they fit my entire experience on Vancouver Island into. So, when it comes to time on TV and people saying, you should do this, you should do that, you should do another thing, and why did they do that? You know, realize that there's this massive experience and this microcosm that you actually get to experience with the person. I think it would be a great series that is 3 hours a week. It'd be fantastic. People would have so much more of a chance to really get their story across. And the editors too, you know, the editors could be liberal and they could kind of relax and show a lot of what goes on that never makes it to TV, because it's eclipsed by an interesting little bit. It's the way it is, you know. If you've got 10 people you're following and it's going to fit into 10 hour-long episodes with 15 minutes of commercials each one, nobody's going to get a ton of time. We didn't. Nobody else has ever got a ton of time. It's just a little tiny bit of your experience. So just to bring awareness to that. I also want to talk about the money for just a second. A lot of people focus on the money. The money is amazing. It would be fantastic to win $500,000. All of us go to boot camp feeling like this is our chance to go show what we know and get paid massive amounts of money and be a survival hero and make huge money. I mean, everybody thinks that. You're like, I've spent a ton of time in the bush. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to come home with $500,000. By the time you leave boot camp, the competitive edge is kind of going away. By the time you're done with the pre-launch, you know, you're hanging out with your friends. You still want the money, but it's starting to leave your mind. And by the time you're out there 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, the concept of money and the importance of money, it gets harder and harder to grab. And it just becomes, you're there because you want to last as long as you can. And the money starts to get kind of nebulous. The sum of $500,000, you know it's big, but it really doesn't have a ton of relevance to you. Like if you had $500,000, this is one thing that was told to me by production, and someone had told them that was on the show. Not sure who, but they said in that moment when you're out there 40 days, if someone were to bring you that $500,000 in a suitcase in the bush, that $500,000 in the bush would not buy you a cheeseburger because there ain't one around. The value of $500,000, it really starts to lose its reality after you've been in the woods that long. You're like, if I had $500,000, I couldn't dry my socks out with it. I couldn't get a grilled cheese sandwich with it because there isn't a grilled cheese sandwich out here. I couldn't get my family out here because, you know, $500,000 is just, it's a bunch of paper, and without a phone, without a train, without an airplane, you get the idea. You know, $500,000 when you have been saturated in survival, it's really, it loses its appeal, it loses its value. It just becomes something that's more of an idea that you kind of remember but have largely forgot about. Staying as long as you can take it seems to kind of take the place of that $500,000. Doing the best you can, that kind of supersedes that $500,000. Winning the $500,000 would validate everything you did. It'd be a wonderful thing. But the actual value of the money and what you can buy with it, you start thinking on day 40, you're like, if I had $500,000 right now, I would buy, and all you could think about would be like, you know, like a warm bed. And you start thinking, you know, I just want a cheeseburger. I just want an omelet. I'll talk to you guys just a second about being in the alone family. Everybody that's been on the show, here we kind of all have this shared experience. Whether you've been there 15 minutes and tapped due to shock, or whether you've been there 87 days like Fowler was. We've all got our own version of what that experience is like. For the people that left early, for whatever reason, you know, you have that memory of the crushing weight of what it actually is compared to what you thought it was. And for the people that have been there for long periods of time, you lose a lot of fat, you lose a lot of muscle, a lot of weight, you lose some of your marbles because you don't have outside input to kind of calibrate your thoughts to, because you're not dealing with people, you're either by yourself, or in my case, I was with my wife, and that didn't do me any favors. Just kidding on that, totally just kidding. So everybody's got this shared experience, and not everybody keeps in touch, but a lot of us keep in touch. A lot of us keep in touch with the production guys, Ryan and Rolf and Zach and Heather and Cable, Dave, Kieran, a lot of people, Paul, a lot of these people, you guys know who you are. The world might not know who you are, but you were instrumental in making this happen and taught us a ton of things. Ryan was great to work with in production. Raphael was, I learned so much from Rolf, a guy that was, you'd ask a question, he'd laser focus on you, answer your question, ask you if there was anything else, always really quiet, and then he would move on to the next thing when he knew he was done with you. I never saw anybody that was that good at working with people in charge of anything of any importance. It was amazing to work with Rolf. I also want to say something about Sean Cable taught me a lot of the stuff that I do here on the channel. Most of what I learned about operating a camera, I learned from Sean and Paul, the guys that taught us how to run cameras. And if it wasn't for those guys, I would have never started this YouTube channel, and you wouldn't be watching this video right now. Production on the show, great people. I had a great experience with them. Top shelf company. It was just all positive. And being in the Alone family, talking to other people from other seasons, there's people that I've hung out with. And Chris Wilkes from season 4, he came up here to Alaska last spring. And him and I spent a week just being bush hippies. We took a canoe trip, we went pike fishing, we went sightseeing, sat around a lot of campfires, had a great time. Last year, Dave McIntyre from season 2, he came up to our place in Michigan, and we sat around a campfire cooking maple syrup and BSing, and I had a great time with Mac. Just good people. It's a close group in a lot of ways. We've all got stories. It's such a unique experience that being part of that group, having your peers that you can talk with, it's an amazing thing. Anybody that's on season 6, 7, 8, the subsequent seasons, we look forward to talking to you guys. You're going to have an amazing time, and you're going to be welcomed with open arms into the Alone family. I want to talk about the negative side of things just a bit here. I want to talk about haters, crackpots, and know-it-alls. Being part of Alone, you're dealing with social media. Having a YouTube channel like Brooke has, like I have, you get some people that want to comment on your time on Alone. There are people who are not happy with anything you do in the series. There are people that say, oh, that was a dumbass thing to do, and oh, I would have done it this way, and you know, this is stupid, and why didn't they go this route? And get on the show yourself, do your own thing. You know, and you also get these people that are like, you know, season 2 wasn't as good as season 1. Season 3 is in Patagonia, and that, you know, what's that? You know, it looks nice down there. Or season 4, it's back at Vancouver Island. You got to be kidding. We're sick of that. You know, season 5, you know, this is people from the other seasons. This is dumb. Season 4, 2 people? Well, how's it Alone in the first place? There are people who can't be happy with anything at all, but they still seem to love the show. They're just tweaked at it because it's not what they envisioned it every time they turn it on. It's what the show actually is. It's the way it's edited. It's the way it's produced. And for all those people out there that just cannot be happy with Alone, that are just tweaked out at every single thing about the show because it's not what they would have it be, whatever, man. Then you get the crackpots. There are people who will write a 400-word, 3-page letter about this is what you should do in this situation. I would take this kind of bank line and this kind of paracord and only this kind of, and there was a guy that talked about making, you know, you don't need to take a cutting tool because you can take a pot lid and make a machete out of a pot lid and then use the 7 strings of the inside of your paracord just ad nauseum. You know, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and then almost every one of us that's been on that show has got one of these emails like, I would do these 25,000 things. And not many of those things are practical. Not many of those things seem like they would work in the first place. And there are those people out there that just go off about the 50 million things that you should do in that situation, no matter how unfeasible they actually are. So if you do get on the show and you actually get to go out in the field and get the Alone experience, just get ready to field a few of those comments and emails from people that just have 100 zillion ideas. And then there's the know-it-alls. There are people who have made a career out of talking about the show Alone, saying this is how this is and this is how this other thing is and this person is going to do this but it's not going to work for them because this and this. There's a few of them out there, and I don't think there's any of them that have any real cred. People who go camping, people who go fishing, and they think that spending their weekends camping or spending their weekends fishing gives them the credibility to professionally dissect the show and tell you what is being done wrong and what needs to be done in its place. There are people out there like that. There's not a lot of them, but there are people who have made their mark on the world by being know-it-alls. You know, even a blind dog can find a biscuit. You after a show is over, you can pick it apart all you want. Before a show starts, you can make your guesses and your guesstimations. But until you've spent weeks and weeks and weeks living off the land, really, and not with fishing poles and canoes and tons of real gear, but just minimalistic gear in a setting where you're by yourself and you don't have a frame of reference that keeps you focused. You're just dealing with your own head, your own ideas, your own thoughts of what you think will work the best. The people out there that are know-it-alls, that take a collegiate professorship type of a stance and diagnose the things that are being done wrong by the contestants on Alone, just have fun with how awesome you are. Stay in your own little world, have everything figured out, have everything, all the I's dotted, the T's crossed, and make believe that you really know what everyone is doing wrong at any given time, and this is what they should do, and just be happy with how smart you are. Oh, and by the way, don't really go out and spend any real time in the bush by yourself, because you're going to be cold, you're going to be hungry, you're going to be miserable, no matter how smart you think you are. There's also a lot about Alone to be said regarding regrets. Lots of people have tapped on Alone and then wanted to get right back into the contest. They realized after they tapped that oh my goodness, what did I do? I tapped too soon. I've taken this opportunity and I've messed it up. That's happened on every single season. Someone will quit and then wish they had not quit. The show is full of regrets. Just look at season 5, just what just happened. Carly, the second longest lasting contestant ever on Alone, a couple days in, puts a nasty hook in the back of her hand. She was this close on season 3, and she was the first one out on season 4. Even though I have nothing but respect for her cred, she's going to have to live with that regret. That oh, what could have been? Why did I do this? And, why did it happen that way? Carly's time in Patagonia would have won any other season. She was there that long. She was pulled because of her weight. I'm sure she's got regrets over how things have played out. I don't know if anybody's really happy on this show with the way it shakes out ultimately. Everybody wishes they would have done something different. People that have tapped super early have got a lot of crap about it. Just lots of negativity. It's very easy to be mean like that and to run somebody down because they weren't out there a long time. But please, everyone, please understand that you've never had an experience like they had. It's just such an incredibly one-off type of situation. People don't get dropped off in the woods where they have a couple things to live off of and camera gear. It's just a weird thing. The best proof of that is season 1. If you watch season 1, nobody knew what to expect. There was nothing they could look at and say, okay, this is the way it's going to go. By the time you got to season 2, everyone had seen that entire arc of the 50 some days, when Alan Kay won season 1. They saw that arc of, okay, people are losing a lot of weight. They're getting crazy. There's a lot of people that have left just because they've had enough. And you can't be out there for a year. You're not going to make 2 years or whatever. Season 1 was so groundbreaking that all the subsequent seasons have lost that. They've lost a lot of that tension that season 1 had, that magic of season 1, that horror of being isolated and alone. And once you've seen that whole process, then you have a pattern. By the time they shot the Patagonia season, people had seen 1 and 2, and they're like, oh, okay, we see what this process looks like and we prepare for it. The people on 1, it was so groundbreaking, no one had any idea how long it was going to last. Alan Kay was amazed that he was the last person out there at 54 days. He thought he'd still be, fighting it out with everybody else. Everybody else was gone. People forget that that scenario of being alone by yourself, surviving in the wild, with your little bit of tools, that it is it's foreign to the human experience. Most people don't camp by themselves. Most people don't go out on many solo treks, and almost 99.999% of the people never go out and try to last weeks or months by themselves in the woods. It's a rarity. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's so rare in the human experience that it's almost not worth even mentioning. So when people see someone that taps early, or they see something, see somebody that leaves early, and they're like, well, I would have done this and I would have done that. Please realize that the experience is unique, and you don't know what you're going to do in that moment, because that moment is so weird and foreign to your experience as a human being. When that moment happens, it'll surprise you. That experience will surprise you. People regret tapping, people regret some of the gear they took, they regret the choices they made while they were out there. And that's part of the fun of the show, it's part of the tragedy of the show. Just understand that if you're a critic and you're like, you should have done this, I wish it was this way, almost every one of us that have been on the show probably has at least one or two things we wish were different too. So Brooke and I did not win $500,000. Jim and Ted Baird won $500,000. Hats off to both you guys. Jim and Ted are real people. They've got real credibility. They've got real time in the bush way before Alone. They got the guts and the toughness to be the winners of Alone. And tons and tons and tons of respect to those guys. Pete and Sam Brockdorf, those guys were right there, man. Tough, resilient. That's the kind of thing you need to win this show. So let's talk for just a second about the skills that you need to be on this show. So you're never going to get past boot camp if you don't have a basic set of skills. You better know how to swim. There'll be a swim test. You better know how to start a fire. There'll be tests like that. Building a shelter out of whatever you can find. All that stuff has been talked about on the Making the Cut episode. But what you really need, what is really important to be successful on Alone, is you have to be resilient. You don't have to be great at a million different bushcraft things. If you can enjoy yourself out there, if you can enjoy the scenery and enjoy the uniqueness of it, and relish the challenge of it all, and just hang in there day after day and just be happy to be part of the thing, and happy to have that opportunity to show what you can do if you were in that situation, I think that's the best place you can come from. Natural resilience and appreciating what the whole Alone experience is. I think that's the real skills that you need to win. The big juxtaposition is boot camp and getting out of the bush. People that come to boot camp, they're like, oh, I'm gonna, this knife, I put my special grind on this knife and it can make the best feather sticks, and I prefer this grind for this reason, and I like this piece of gear. In this setting, I use this particular kind of trap. There is a lot of that. Some people can vent off a lot of knowledge that they feel comfortable with. They think, I know these things and I'm secure with them, and I'm gonna just claim that, and this is what I would do in that situation. But by the time you leave the bush, in my circumstance, Brooke and I, it was 7 weeks after the helicopter dropped us off. I was not the same person. Not the same person in the least. If I would have went from Vancouver Island to the next season's boot camp, like season 6 boot camp, and had to hang out with a bunch of people from boot camp, I would literally probably just be rolling my eyes and scratching my head the whole time going, these guys don't know jack. And it's not that the skills aren't important. It's not that people's experience up to that point is irrelevant. None of that. The real gem to Alone. The real takeaway. The real thing of value that you get from being part of Alone. You gain a perspective. You see what works. You see what doesn't work. You see all these things that look good in survival books, and none of it works in your setting. None of it works in the climate you're in the environment you're in. Maybe you do find something that works, and you file that away. You put that in a little treasure chest and say, that's real. This over here is not real. This little tidbit, this is actually real, and I'm going to hang on to it for the rest of my life. And day after day after day, you have those revelations and epiphanies of what it's really like to survive a long period of time in the bush. You realize that it's extremely simple. You're only dealing with the basics. There's tons and tons of downtime. If you can stay warm, if you can stay dry, and if you can stay happy, you're killing it. And if you can stay fed too, you literally have the whole experience right there in your hand. You own it. If you can stay warm and dry and fed and happy. And you find out that survival, it's not 40 volumes of survival books. It's not knowing everything there is to know. It's just the experience of dealing with fire and water and food day in and day out and day in and day out, and dealing with downtime and enjoying quiet and enjoying just your own company. And it changes you. It enlightens you to what that's really like. I had no idea what that would be like before I went on Alone. And after having spent 7 weeks in the bush, I kind of have a hard time talking to other people that are interested in survival, because you're not the same person anymore. You're different. You have gained a perspective that you don't get unless you've spent a lot of time in the bush. You just can't have that perspective. The only way you can get it is to drag yourself through that experience, or with Alone, to have that opportunity to be drugged through that experience. It's like knowing what a surgery is like, spending weeks in the hospital and going through a major surgery. You can read every book on the shelf about it, but you don't know until you've been through that. And that is the real jewel that you take away from the Alone experience, because it's rare and it's unique, and it's just something that you have to go out and get yourself, because you can never read a book about it and understand it. You can't practice bushcraft skills in your backyard and get that perspective. You just can't get it. You can't be a commentator on YouTube and talk about the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do in this situation. You can't get that perspective from any of those things. It's why the Alone family is close. It's why we've all got that common experience. It's something that I urge you, if you want that experience, it's right there to get. You don't have to get on Alone. You don't have to get on any other show that's like that. Take a week out of your life. Go into the back country so you can't hear a road, you can't hear traffic, or get as far away as you can wherever you're at. Take a couple things with you and just settle in to getting yourself food, getting yourself water, having your own company all through a long night, making your own fire with basic tools, and the rhythm of day after day after day after day of that. And you're going to get that perspective. You're going to start to realize that, I'm hungry, I need to get food, I tried these things, they didn't work, I'm going to get food this way, oh, this works, this is actually real. And you take that nugget of what's real and you hang on to it forever. And you walk away with that perspective, that emotion of what that experience has done to you and how it's changed the way you look at things. That's the real jackpot of Alone. All right, now that I've talked ad nauseum about Alone, I'm going to tell you guys how to get on the show. First of all, contact the production company. If you don't know who the production company is, look at the credits on the bottom of the screen at the end of the show. If you watch the screen and you don't care who it is and you don't care to look it up, you're probably never ever going to make it on the show. Ever. So, do your homework. Figure out who the production company is. Contact the production company. Contrary to popular belief, they're always looking for people to be on the show. There's no reason why you can't get one of those spots. This is what you do. When you apply, send everything in that you can. The pictures of what you've done, where you've been, who you are. Write them a letter about, this is why I think I would be a good pick for this show. But be cool, be honest. These are great people at the production company. They're good folks. They're looking for good folks to work with. They're cool, they want to work with cool people. They're looking for people that, that they're going to be good people to deal with. They want to find folks that they think have a good story that people are going to want to follow. It was put to us, it's the hero's journey. You want to be involved with the people on the show and root for them. A butthole who's got the answer to every single situation in the world, and it's all theory, and I can do this and that, and I'm this and that. You're probably not going to get on the show in the first place, because nobody's going to want to root for you if you're on camera saying, well, this is what you do here and I'm this and that. Just be cool, man. Just chill out and enjoy the process. Everybody I met in the entire process was a good person. They were cool people. They're interesting people doing interesting stuff. All the producers, all the PAs, all the people that are running the show, moving all the parts where they need to be. Good people, interesting, cool people. If you get in contact with these people, be totally honest with them about everything. If you don't know how to do something, spit it out that way. Honestly, I don't know how to do that. I haven't been around that. Nobody's got anything at all against honesty. People think they need to know everything on every page of every survival book. That's not the point. Ultimately, when you watch Alone, you're gonna root for the people on Alone. You want them to do good. You want them to stick it out. If you're just honest and you just be yourself and you just relax and tell it like it is and have fun with the folks there at left field, you have a good chance of going to boot camp. And when you're at boot camp, there's going to be a giant series of tests. And you don't have to get everything right. You just have to do the best you can and, just relax. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the people. The survival experts are all cool folks. The production company's good. They're going to take care of you. You're not going to have to hail a cab to get back to the airport. Everything will be taken care of. Just do the best you can with what you're given at boot camp. It's ultimately you're not going to be competing with any of these people in the first place. You're ultimately probably going to be friends with most of them. You're going to be out, if you make it on the show, you're going to be out in the bush wishing, man, I hope they're doing good. I wonder how Pete and Sam are doing. I wonder how Chris and Brody are doing. These guys are good people that you like, and you just forget about competing. So just realize that at boot camp, it's going to be all about competition. Ultimately, it won't be in the end. So you say, hey, Dave, I put my stuff in, they contacted me, great. They invited me to boot camp, I went, great. You tell me, hey, they asked me to come out to the show. What is your advice now? My advice is the lead up to the show, to the launch, is going to be a great time. Enjoy every minute of it. Just enjoy visiting with people. Enjoy the whole process. It's a wonderful world to be part of. And my advice for actually surviving, get ready to roll with it. Don't plan what you're going to do. Try not to paint yourself into a corner by saying, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I'm going to take these things and I'm going to make these things out of it. Just keep an open mind, keep an open outlook. Realize that you're part of something special and you're going to do the best you can. Stay calm and just wait for it to happen. And that's how you get on Alone. Hope I've given you guys a little insight into what the process is actually like. At least my experience and what I thought of it, and the advice I can give you that I hope you'll benefit from. Anybody who's got a question, throw it in the comments below. Hit the like, hit the share, because there's other people out there that are, interested in this topic. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell to get updates when I post videos. I hope if you want to get on a loan, you do get that opportunity. I hope if you do get on, you do really well and you come away with that perspective. And maybe $500,000. Thank you guys so much for watching Bush Radical. My name is Dave Whipple. Be radical, eh? We'll see you soon. Hopefully, we'll see you on a loan.